Okay, so are you at least 18 and are you a believer?
Yes, I'm 19 and I'm a believer.
Fantastic. And do you believe that Jesus fulfilled prophecies?
Yes, I believe Jesus fulfilled prophecies. Yes.
Or do you believe that he fulfilled the messianic prophecies?
Can you uh can you define that, please?
Yeah, messianic prophecy is essentially any prophecy in the Old Testament about the Messiah, and it's a little bit subjective. There are some prophecies that people think are about the Messiah that may not be, and there are some that are not about the Messiah that they might think that they are about the Messiah. And then there's like the third category of things that just actually aren't prophecies at all, that people just want them to be prophecies. But obviously, I wouldn't accept that. So,
Perhaps you're referring to
what's that?
Zechariah. Zechariah's prophecies, perhaps is that what you're intending to get at?
Oh, there's a bunch of them. There's a
Yeah.
dozens of prophecies in the Old Testament that could be categorized as a messianic that either aren't messianic or they were not fulfilled.
Okay, so when you say not fulfilled, they weren't written in the Bible as fulfilled. You don't know for sure. There's no way to know that whether or not they were unfulfilled because it's simply not notated in the Bible if they were fulfilled or not. Which we can conclude that because the Bible is objective that it's possible that they were fulfilled in some way, shape, or form, perhaps metaphorically, that they just simply weren't noted down. Or is that's conclusive, right? It's possible that that's the situation.
What I'm saying is possible that they were fulfilled outside of the Bible, but we would still know if they were fulfilled, right?
How,
But
how that happened 2,000 years ago?
well, if Jesus was an actual king in Israel and he actually defeated all of Israel's enemies, that would be pretty apparent.
No, it wasn't Israel's enemies that he was trying to defeat. He was trying to defeat the ultimate enemy, the devil, which he did by dying for our sins.
Yeah, where's that prophecy?
I'm sorry, what are you saying? No,
Uh,
I'm not saying that's prophecy.
Okay, well,
Happens.
the prophecies that we actually have that are considered messianic don't talk about a devil. It talks about the actual physical enemies of Israel.
Like what, Rome under occupation, perhaps Babylon. What enemies are you referring to in that situation? Are you referring to later enemies or their current situation when Jesus was alive and preaching?
Well, that's the fun thing about the Old
Because
Testament messianic prophecies is the enemy is typically not specifically noted. It just says that
mm,
they're going to be defeated.
enemy as the devil, which they never really say the devil. But based on inferences, we can concur that the ultimate enemy of Jesus Christ and God is the devil, as in evil. It spreads the evil into the world, and
Yeah.
ultimately is the cause of all sin and disdain and human corruption. So Jesus dying on the cross provides an opportunity for humans individually to defeat their own personal devils,
No,
which was accomplished.
that's not at all
Sorry,
a
what do
prophecy. The prophecy says
you?
he will cut off the chariot from Ephraim and the war horse from Jerusalem, and the battle bow will be cut off. Those are military victories.
Sorry, can you restate that, please?
Yeah, this is Zechariah 9 and 10. It says, he will cut off the chariot from Ephraim and the war horse from Jerusalem, and the battle bow will be cut off. This is like actual military language, it's not metaphors.
All right, and who's saying this?
Zechariah.
Zachariah is. Well, okay. Based on the actual belief of the Jerusalemites in the time of Jesus, they assumed that Jesus was going to be a military leader based on some misinterpretations of previous scriptures. And of course, this was written in a different language, so exactly what their exact words are, and different words can vastly change the meaning of it.
I
But
know Hebrew, though.
including Jerusalem and the natives in Israel were also confused widely on wasn't coming in with swords and weapons and trying to break free of Rome.
Said would happen.
No, not that's not what all the prophets said, and they
It
didn't
is. I
say this.
just so 9 where it says that he's defeat the
That,
enemies in Ephraim. So that's what that says, and then it also says in the other prophecies, for example, let's go to Ezekiel 37.
okay. And I want to point out that you can technically take any point of the Bible because the Bible is subjective and was written by man, as you stated previously, not denoting it in a sense, but denoting some of the various lines. You can take any book and take a line out of context and then use it to twist in your way. And I have the Bible in front of me, but I have no specific lines that I'm going to be pulling out and trying to twist into my context because I'm not academically prepared for that. I saw your live stream and joined. Actually, particularly, I wanted to talk to you about Noah's promise, or the promise to Noah, because I noted you were talking about that with
want to talk about the prophecies.
I'm fine with talking about prophecies too. I wrote a few notes down and I wanted to talk to you about that. And I actually did write down that I wanted you to elaborate on Zechariah, because with that same person you had been talking about, Zechariah's involvement in the possibility of his basic corruption with via the Bible, because his in fulfillment of the prophecies is your belief that everything the Bible said is therefore incorrect or inconclusive?
No.
And so then why do you believe that the Bible is completely incorrect if you're not going on the previous statement that because that the prophecies weren't concluded, that it's just completely all wrong?
I never said that everything in the Bible is wrong. I don't know where you got that from. Jesus is just not the Messiah because he didn't fulfill any prophecies, and the New Testament is a contradiction of the Old Testament.
Well, I think the claim to say that he didn't fulfill any prophecies is very much out there. He said that he would destroy the temple in 3 days' time, build it up, referring to himself as the temple.
And when was that written?
Sorry, what was that?
When was that written?
When was that written? Do you want me to? Sorry, I don't have specific dates.
Yeah, the earliest Gospel, Mark, was written in roughly 70 A.D., maybe 60s.
Right, by his apostle Mark.
So long after he was already dead. So I wouldn't conclude that as a messianic prophecy. The messianic prophecies are the actual prophecies that were given by God in the Old Testament.
Yeah, the Old Testament, which is technically Jewish scripture, which I am Christian, I'm not Jewish. Therefore, I'd probably be better at arguing things that happened in the New Testament, which don't really refer, except you're talking about Revelations, which is the prophecies of the future to come.
Right, but the question is, what messianic prophecies did he fulfill?
Right, yes, yeah.
Right, so where in the Old Testament can I find a messianic prophecy that he fulfilled?
Sorry, I can't tell you specifically.
There would be a king that...
you got one? Or?
Well, he was prophesied to be a king.
He was.
A king would come to the Jews.
Okay, sorry, can you hear?
Yes, he was prophesied to be a king, I agree, but he was never a king, which is a big problem.
Well, he's king of heaven.
It doesn't say he's going to be king in heaven. It says he's going to be king in Israel.
He says he's king of kings. I mean, king of kings and Lord
based
of lords.
on the scripture,
I'm sure you believe that, but it says in Micah 5:2 that he's going to rule in Israel. That's a location.
Out of the house of David.
Right. So based on the scripture, we can tell that he was considered a king because of the fact that he was scorned in said way. He would put a crown of thorns on his head. He was dressed in purple robes and he held a scepter. And though he was crucified,
they mocked him
for being the king of Israel.
No, they mocked him for not being the king of Israel. Herod was the king in Israel. Antipas was the king in Israel.
So, but you can conclude that there was a connection with him and being a king of Israel.
No, there's not a connection. They were making fun of him because he wasn't the king. Also, Seth, thank you for the dragon. Being made fun of for not being a king doesn't make you a king.
No, I'm not inferring. But he was considered the king of several.
He was never considered a king in Israel. Not once. Not for a single day.
So, sorry, but I mean, you can't really conclude that. You can't conclude that there wasn't a person that entire time. Because, I mean, you first of all, you didn't live in that period.
Give one day in which he ever sat on the throne of King David.
He doesn't need to sit on the throne.
That's what a king does. Yes, the king is actually the one who administers justice and sits on the throne of the king. You don't get to be a king just because you say you're a king.
I mean, Caesar was also not sitting on the throne of David. He was sitting on a throne in Rome, and he was considered their king. Their Pontius Pilate. He was the one ruling.
He was the king of the kingdom. And how do you know that he was the king of the kingdom?
Because it was written in the Bible that he was the king during that time. He was the one occupying Jerusalem.
Because he was the actual king in real history. He actually ruled and reigned over his kingdom, didn't he?
Yes.
Lone Wolf, thank you for all the hands. Yeah. When did Jesus rule and reign in Israel over the Israelites?
All right. Regardless, I can't base a time where God did rule in Israel, but I mean, based on the belief, trying to make the statement that because God was determined to be a king in Israel. I'm not sure which prophet said that. It was prophesied that he would be a king, but saying that he was going to be the actual ruling king is up to like subjugation. You can change the wording and change the phrase. It's obviously written in Hebrew, in a mix of Greek, and it's possible that they weren't even using the proper word king. It's completely possible all these ways. I'm not trying to say that he wasn't the king. I also could make the point that some people probably viewed him as a king, and you kind of need to be viewed as a king to be considered a king in a similar way. I view him
just because somebody thinks you're a king doesn't make you a king. A king actually rules and reigns over a people group.
I would argue that he did kind of rule and reign. He preached and prophesied. People followed his rules in the world. Be kind to your neighbor, things like that. People still follow his rules to these days. If you consider them rules, I kind of consider them just ways of life. But
so was the prophet Samuel a king?
No, he was a prophet.
But people followed him.
Yeah, but the prophet Samuel was before the actual king of Israel, and he didn't.
Oh, there it goes. So there was an actual king on the throne other than Samuel.
Yes.
Right. And who was the king on the throne when Jesus was alive?
Caesar, Pontius Pilate.
Herod of Judea.
Yeah. You said, what did you say? Never mind. Sorry.
Okay. So Herod was the king, not Jesus. Jesus never sat on the throne for a single day. And the prophecies clearly state that he's going to be a king over Israel. For example, if we go to Ezekiel 37:22, the promise of sending the Messiah during the restoration period, it says, I will make them one nation in the land, on the mountains of Israel, and one king shall be king over them all. Never again shall they be two nations, and never again shall they be divided into two kingdoms. They shall never defile themselves with their idols and their detestable things, and with any of their transgressions. I will save them from all the apostasies to which they have fallen, and will cleanse them, and they shall be my people, and I will be their God. And my servant David will be king over them. They shall have one shepherd, and they shall follow my ordinances, and be careful to observe my statutes. They will live in the land that I gave to my servant Jacob, in which your ancestors lived. They and their children's children shall live there forever. And my servant David will be their prince forever. So this is about an actual king. It's not about a spiritual king.
Sorry, could you scroll back up to the first part of that verse, please?
Yeah, I think we started in 22.
Mm-hmm. Never again will they gather into the quarters and bring there into. And can you point out the point where it actually says that Jesus is going to be the king?
It doesn't say Jesus is going to be the king. That's the point. It just says that there's going to be somebody from the line of David who's the king, and it says they're going to rule over the nation.
There were people from the line of David that were the king.
I'm sure there were, but it wasn't Jesus.
You were saying that they claimed specifically that Jesus was the king, but now you're going back on that. You're saying that he was
exactly the opposite. Jesus was never a king.
No, you said that they claimed that he was going to be a king. That you said they prophesied that he was going to be a king.
Yes, the prophets claimed that the Messiah would be a king, not Jesus.
Can you read that line to me, please, where it says Messiah is going to be the king?
Yeah, that's what Messiah means. You know what the word Messiah means?
Yes, the Messiah is Jesus. He is.
No. What does the word Messiah mean?
The word Messiah?
Yeah.
I can't define that. I just know what it means. It's
the word Messiah is Mashiach in Hebrew, and it means anointed. It refers to either a priest or a king.
And Jesus was a priest.
He was not.
Could argue. I mean, not specifically a priest. He didn't go through the Jerusalem temple. One could argue he was priest.
He was never a priest or a king. He was never even anointed.
How do you know he was never anointed? Does it say that?
Why did they put on?
How do you know that he was anointed?
Why did they put on the crucifix, King of the Jews?
Because they were mocking him for not being the king. Do you understand? Like, as he's being executed, they're rubbing it in his face that there's a guy who's claiming to be a king, but he actually has no kingdom.
Why did his wife tell him to let him go? That
his wife?
When they were.
Wait, Jesus' wife?
No, not Jesus's wife. There was no wife for Jesus. We're talking about why was the ruler, when they were going to condemn him, his wife came and said, "You're making an error by punishing this man. I had a dream, and you are making a serious error by gonna crucify this man."
I don't know about that Bible verse.
Oh yeah.
But it's irrelevant to me. It doesn't. He's never a king.
He didn't come here to be a king.
The prophecy said he would be a king. I just read it. You want me to read it again?
No, it's not necessary for you to read again.
He's king. He's king and Lord. He's king in heaven.
No, he's not. There's no prophecy about a king in heaven. It's about a king on earth in Israel.
Interesting. Prophesying can be
You should
very
tell
much
you should tell the Catholic
subjective,
Church what you're saying.
Grandma.
I have.
Can we go back to the
I talked to a Catholic bishop a couple months ago.
Well, I'm sure you could get an earful with listening to them.
I'm sure I could.
So, could you
No, don't apologize.
could you go back to Noah's promise? That's kind of what I joined for specifically. I had a point.
Isaiah 56?
No,
Or
Noah.
54?
The God promised Noah that he would never again.
Oh, Genesis 9? Is it Genesis 9 or 8? I always forget.
I'm sorry, I don't know.
Yeah, it's
either.
Genesis 9.
Okay.
Give me a second.
For it.
There we go. Yeah, Genesis 9. We'll start in verse 12, I guess. God said, "This is a sign of the covenant which I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you. For all future generations I have set my bow in the clouds, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth."
Right. Okay. Sorry. Is that the end? Could you keep reading? Because that doesn't seem.
I mean, how much do you want me to read? Yeah. "When I bring clouds over the earth, and the bow is seen in the clouds, I will remember my covenant that is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh. And the waters shall never again become a flood to destroy all flesh."
Right. Okay. Thank you. That that line there, the waters shall never again become a flood to destroy all flesh. You can't disagree that did become true. Never again did God flood the entire earth. And there actually is.
It never happened the first time either.
How do you know that? I mean, there actually is scientific evidence that there was in fact a likely flood on earth. And not only does the Christian religion believe in that, many religions believe that there was a flood on earth, making it kind of a historic.
There was a regional flood in the ancient Near East. There wasn't a global flood.
And how would you know that specifically? Also,
because we actually have records of it.
Records from the actual time of the flood, which couldn't exist.
Yeah, we literally do. Yeah. And do you know that archaeologists have actually uncovered evidence that the likely cause of the flood was when the Mediterranean Sea filled the whole Nile region and met with the Persian Gulf? That's why there's literal settlements right now. If you go to the Persian Gulf, there are little settlements where water of the Persian Gulf is. They dove down there and found settlements from when the Persian Gulf wasn't there before. It used to be dry land. The whole region, the whole region flooded.
Yes. So the whole region did flood, but you can conclude that. Yes. Did you hear the sign? Or never mind. I'm not going to get into that.
There's no scientific evidence for a global flood.
There's no scientific evidence that there wasn't a global flood either.
But there's no scientific evidence that the tooth fairy doesn't exist. You don't establish something as being true just because there's no affirmative evidence that it didn't happen. I could just say that pigs fly, and you have no evidence that my pig doesn't fly.
What about the geology records that show the stratus of the rock structure?
I mean, it doesn't point.
The rock structure is layered.
Yeah.
And it moves. What about all that? That shows some flooding went on.
They don't. Those layers typically take hundreds of thousands of years to form. And geologists overwhelmingly reject the idea that there was a global flood. And the global flood also ignores a lot of really big issues. For example, how in the world did the lions have food to eat for 371 days? What were they eating?
What about the people that built the ark? Those scientists have a
You're breaking up. I can't hear you.
What you're saying.
You're breaking up. I can't hear you.
Ark they built.
You mean you mean the Ark exhibit in Kentucky?
So that you can hear me first, please.
I can hear you right now.
He can hear you because he's reacting.
That's good. Okay, I'm gonna keep playing my video.
So, what Ark you talk about? The one in Kentucky?
Yes.
What about it?
Different philosophy than you on
We're having trouble
and
hearing you right now.
Despite whether or not the flood happened, I'd like to get on the question. That's interesting because God did start with food.
We're having a little bit of trouble hearing you guys. You're breaking up really bad.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you right now, yeah.
Okay, I might just need to keep my video off. I was hoping that I could have my video because facial reactions are kind of important in a debate, but
No.
might have to keep it off.
Sure.
Can you hear me still?
I can hear you right now, yeah.
Okay, so I would like to get back on the fact about the lions because God did say that Noah should stock the boat with providence to survive the journey.
Right.
So and then
and
that
so
the lions were moving.
What were the
It's more.
What were the lions eating the whole time?
Well, the Bible doesn't say exactly what Noah did stock, but it did say that.
What
Noah
do lions eat?
Meat,
flesh.
I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. So, how many living animals do you need to put on a boat just to serve as food to the lions?
Sorry, that's another thing that you're assuming. You're assuming that the lions were eating the entire time. It was a miraculous creation by God. God shut the boat. I mean, I know you don't believe in the miracles of the Jesus, but it's completely possible that a miracle did occur in which a circumstance where the lions were put to sleep for that certain amount of time and then woke up and again.
You know, you still have to consume calories if you're sleeping, right?
Sorry, you missed the part perhaps about miraculousness of the entire situation.
Oh, right. So you want me to believe in miracles again? Okay. So if God's just going to do miracles, then why do anything at all? Just make a miracle.
A miracle,
well,
like
he's
what?
God, not you.
No, that's what I'm saying. If you're just going to do a miracle, what's the point in having the whole Noah story? The whole Noah story is useless at that point. By the way,
really
how did the penguins climb down the mountain without stumbling and falling and killing themselves?
Sorry, that's really funny. Sorry, I don't know how to answer that question. Maybe they slid on their stomachs. That's just funny.
Yeah, it's a rough one. And how did the kangaroos get to Australia?
I'm sorry, that's really funny. I'm not. Sorry, I don't know how to verify those questions, and I can't really scientifically argue that perhaps there was different circumstance. Perhaps not the entire globe flooded. Perhaps it was just Israel. I can't really state anything like that. Perhaps it wasn't two of every beast of the land because it states the land, not referring to the entire world. It states the land, and perhaps the land was only referring to a site in Israel. And believing that most of the people originated from Israel and they were the sinners of the world, it would make sense that God was punishing them particularly. And never will I wipe out your people with a flood of water could infer that he did only wipe out a certain region of the earth, which would make things a little more probable.
But he says that he's going to kill everything that has breath in its lungs.
Breath in this lungs, but he doesn't state in which region.
It says, I will blot out from the face of the ground. Sorry, give me a second.
The ground perhaps referring to only his settlement area, because God did have a region, his chosen people, or according to the Jewish scripture, I believe that God loves everyone equally, but according to what we're talking about, the Jewish scripture, the Israelites were his chosen people. And there's perhaps circumstances where he was only punishing them. In fact, in many circumstances, he uplifts those who are sinning more. The Romans, for instance, they're serving different gods than him, something that he clearly doesn't like, but he uplifts them and puts them in a situation above the Israelites because he expects more out of the Jewish people because they are his chosen.
Right, but it says in 721, all flesh died that moved on the earth, birds, domestic animals, wild animals, all swarming creatures that swarm on the earth, and all human beings, everything on dry land in whose nostrils was the breath of life died.
And it specifically says on the earth. Can you Google what on the earth is in Hebrew? Perhaps because they're...
I assume it's like Ba'aretz or all Ha'aretz.
Because neither of us actually read Hebrew or Greek. We probably need to learn dozens of languages to be completely able to understand the Bible and all its metaphoricalness and interpretations. It has very much room for interpretation, and perhaps Earth wasn't referring to the entire globe, but was referring to that side. It's improvable. It's all hypothetical, but that is the situation that we're technically arguing, saying that we don't live in this time, and we can't argue something without hard facts that neither of us have. All we can argue is in metaphoricalness and
right. Yeah. So the phrase that's typically used during the flood is va'akro. So all of the, or all the would be va. The va conjunction means and, which is the beginning of most of the sentences because they don't have periods.
What version of the Bible are you reading from? Is it New King James, or?
I'm reading the NRSV.
The NRSV?
Yeah.
NRSV. Okay, New Romans Version. Okay.
The New Revised Standard Version?
Revised Standard.
Yeah, I have the King James Version, and there are very many alternations between different versions, and in different languages, there's different pronunciations of the words. Different words mean different things in different languages. In fact, it's a big argument in the Catholic Church whether or not Jesus had any siblings, because the fact that
they don't argue at all.
They do.
Didn't.
No, I mean, no, that's what the Catholics say, but that it also says that Jesus had brothers in the Bible.
There's no argument within the Catholic Church.
No, yeah, that's what I was inferring. There was an argument with Catholic churches and Protestants that Jesus had siblings, because the Bible doesn't say that he had siblings, and then the Catholic Church believes that Mary was a virgin her entire life. But the reason that situation happened in the first place is because the word sibling in Hebrew can also be used for the word cousin or uncle, close relative. So it's like it creates all this miscommunication, and because their language wasn't as adapted as now English and all our languages to this day, therefore it's completely possible that misinterpretations of the Bible, which still technically mean that their prophecies or what they're trying to communicate is coming true, just in a different way than what we can currently interpret, with our languages being so vastly different than what theirs was at their time.
What does that have to do with everyone on Earth dying?
Because there's quite ability. Because Earth, we don't know if the word exactly was Earth. That is what that is imprinted into our Bibles, but that could completely be different in Hebrew. That could be completely different in Greek. It could be completely different inferences. It's completely possible that he didn't infer every single person on this globe, which he didn't say globe, he said earth. And earth is also a word for dirt, which the dirt of Israel, his homeland, could have been the only inferenced. And it's much more likely and possible the animals on that specific peninsula, especially considering if you're taking in crater shifts over the entire world, that the animals in that peninsula were possible to be gathered into a single boat and then spread out after the end of the flood.
Sure, but the text literally says, all perished, all flesh that moved on the earth. Upon the earth is pretty important, right? So when we're talking about a specific land in Hebrew, when it uses the word eretz to refer to a particular land rather than the whole earth, typically you would see a conjunction with it. It might say Baha'eretz or Ba'eretz, which means in the land, meaning in a specific land, right? But when it uses like yes, all Ha'eretz, it just means all upon the land, anything that is on the land. So call all Ha'eretz.
Okay, so the land also subjective in a way, because it's actually kind of proving my point there. The land probably refers to the promised land, which is often something that the promised land being the Israelite area, Jerusalem, the area which his people would live forever in. Later in Zechariah, can't quote the verse exactly.
Yeah. Well, the problem is that the book literally tells you that nobody survived. It says nobody survived except for the 8 that were on the boat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, nobody survived. It's completely possible that he was only referring to his Israelites as chosen people.
No. Not what it says.
No entire earth. He says nobody survived. Nobody. The other people on the earth might not have been important in the relationship with what the Jewish believed at the time, which is what they were special in God's eye. And perhaps they infer that no other Jew or no other I guess Jew is the correct term. No other Israelite survived during that time. Using more modern terms for what they would have considered themselves back then, they would have been considered Jewish to themselves. But they no other. It's completely possible that they didn't even take into account the Gentiles, or what they would have been called at that time, because they weren't the chosen people. There is a possibility that people were still living and surviving.
There were no chosen people at the time of the flood.
God punishes his people, and that's not true. They were chosen people. What was that? Really?
Yeah, because he says, I will never destroy the earth again. He gives that promise. I'll never, and he destroyed the earth because of violence.
Yeah.
And he said,
Yeah.
Yep.
Always punishes people, though. That's what it seems like.
He says the entire earth. He's talking about the entire earth. He's not just talking.
Should I go back on that argument then? Should I continue it? I kind of want to talk about
the goal of the flood is to wipe out the wicked mankind. That's the goal of the flood, which means all mankind. That's why it says that only 8 remained.
Okay, so I guess maybe I should repent on that argument. Regardless, that's not really what I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk about Noah's promise specifically.
Sure. What about it?
That he won't destroy the earth again, because I feel like that into say, and you say that none. You did say those were none of the prophecies have come true, and I'm just curious how you think that God destroyed the earth with water again?
I don't think he ever did in the first place. But I'm gonna tell you a joke as an analogy. Okay, this is one of my dad's favorite jokes. My dad used to tell me the joke. There was a guy sitting at the gas station, just clicking his fingers, and somebody walked up to him and said, "Why are you just sitting here all day and night clicking your fingers?" And he goes, "Well, I'm keeping the elephants away." And the guy says to him, "There are no elephants within 1,000 miles of here." And he goes, "Yeah, I'm doing a good job, aren't I?"
Okay. Funny.
There's no elephants that are native to America, right? So when the Bible says that God made a promise that he's not going to destroy the earth with a flood again, basically just a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's not something that's ever going to happen. It's physically impossible. It will never happen.
Sorry, kind of spaced. Oh my gosh. It's never going to happen. So you just think because
it's physically impossible. There's not enough water that can be contained in the atmosphere for a global flood to ever happen.
I feel like that's inconclusive because I mean we're right now worried about global warming and the fact that like the land is shrinking because the glaciers are melting.
Right, but we're talking about whether or not there's enough water to flood the entire world, and there's not.
What's this one?
Look at it. The following that before Jesus was ever born, these were all prophecies that there was going to be Jesus.
Okay, so I have a list of all the prophecies that was made before Jesus' birth. The following predictions were thousands of the years before Jesus was born. Considering his birth, born of the seed of a woman, born of a virgin, seed of Abraham, seed of Isaac, seed of Jacob. Okay, those aren't necessary. The day Jesus was crucified, all these were predicted thousands of years.
Were they predicted?
Verses as well.
Right.
First of all, the day crucified, here are just a few. He was betrayed by a friend. This was in 1000 BC.
Right, but where are the predictions?
Proverbs 41:9.
Proverbs 41 is not a prediction of anything.
Sorry,
why not?
What's PS
Why
right
not?
here? Is PS Proverbs or what's that?
Yeah.
Psalms is PS.
Psalms. My bad.
Psalms, yeah.
Psalms, PS.
So a prediction of the future is a clear form of speech.
Sorry, what are you saying?
They-
A prediction.
Yeah,
Why
so,
isn't that?
so a prophecy is like an actual form of speech, right? And we find that spelled out for us in Deuteronomy 18. For example, I'll grab it real quick for everyone to read.
Why-
It says, anyone who does not heed the words of the prophet, anyone who does not heed the words that the prophet shall speak in my name, I myself will hold accountable. But any prophet who presumes to speak in my name a word that I have not commanded the prophet to speak, or who speaks in the name of other gods, that prophet shall die. You may say to yourself, how can we recognize a word that the Lord has not spoken? If a prophet speaks in the name of the Lord, but the thing does not prove true or take place, it is a word that the Lord has not spoken. So we should know that a prophecy is a clear form of speech. A prophet is saying X, Y, and Z is going to happen, and then we get to look and ask ourselves, did the thing happen, right? A prophecy is not just any random words on a page that we want to be a prophecy.
Okay, sorry. I have other ones though. I don't just have ones from
I want
Psalms.
to inject something.
Okay,
Why
sorry.
does why does the Justicism use the Bible as a form of truth in swearing in people?
They don't.
If it doesn't hold. Yeah, they do.
No, they don't. When you get sworn into office, you have to swear on whatever holy book is relevant to your religion. There have been people sworn in on the Quran. There have been people sworn in on the Bible. There have been people sworn in on other holy books too.
Well, predominantly, if you're a U.S. citizen, and I think you are, predominantly in the United States, that's what we do.
Only if you're a Christian.
I'm sorry, I have more verses though. So he would be silent before accusers, which we can see is a very specific situation.
Where is that prophesied?
Isaiah 53:7.
Oh, great. Isaiah 53. I love that one. So have you read all of Isaiah?
No, I haven't. I've read all the Gospels.
I have.
Okay. I haven't read the entire Bible.
Well, Isaiah 53, I agree with both the Hebrew, the Jewish people, and I agree with biblical scholars that say that Isaiah 53 is about the nation of Israel. And I believe that because whoever wrote Isaiah 53 tells you exactly who the servant is on at least 8 or 9 different occasions leading up to chapter 53. So if you...
Sorry.
What's that?
What the servant is?
Yes, the servant is identified on many occasions leading up to chapter 53. So you don't have to like wonder who the servant is. The servant is the nation of Israel.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I was a little confused on what you were trying to get at there.
Right. So let me read a couple passages to you real quick. They're really short. I'll put them on the screen and see if you can see them. I don't know if you can see them, but I'm sharing my browser with you, I think.
Right, I can see them. I see Isaiah 41. I was talking about Isaiah 53, where he would be wounded and silent before accusers, and that's what I have written.
Right, and that's the nation of Israel. Okay, so the suffering servant is the nation of Israel, and God tells you in the passage, Isaiah 41, 8-9 says, "You Israel, my servant Jacob, whom I've chosen, the offspring of Abraham, my friend, you who I took from the ends of the earth and called you from its furthest corners, saying to you, you are my servant. I have chosen you and not cast you off." So in Isaiah 41, the servant's clearly Israel. Isaiah 43:10, he says, "You are my witnesses, says the Lord, and my servant whom I have chosen." So again, the servant Israel. And then 44:1 and 2, "Hear now, O Jacob, my servant, Israel whom I've chosen." So Israel's servant. 44:21, "Remember these things, O Jacob and Israel, for you are my servant. I formed you. You are my servant, O Israel. Do not forget me." Then 45:4, "For the sake of my servant Jacob and Israel my chosen, I call you by your name." Then 48:20, he says, "Go out from Babylon, flee from Chaldea, declare this with a shout of joy, proclaim it, send it forth to the ends of the earth, and say that the Lord has redeemed his servant Jacob."
I'm sorry, what are you trying to get at right now? I'm
sorry.
A little bit confused.
My point is, we know who the servant is. The servant is Israel.
Okay, all right. Sorry, are you going to read the 53
how did
now?
Israel get that name?
What
Sorry,
name?
what? Israel. Where did Israel originate from? Old Testament, remember who Israel was?
Yeah, Israel was Jacob. That was his second name.
Okay,
Yep.
And he says his servant Jacob, in particularly, I noticed in the first book, is my servant Jacob.
Yeah, which is Israel. Mm-hmm.
But also Israel could be still referring to Jacob as Israel's second name. But sorry, continue. I'm still very curious about what your main point is. He could be completely talking about Jacob, not Israel.
But Jacob's already dead.
That doesn't refer to anything. Jacob is alive in heaven, and according to what the scriptures believe.
Mm-hmm.
So you think the figure of Jacob is the suffering servant in heaven?
I don't necessarily believe anything. I kind of just want to hear what your point is at this point.
Jesus.
I'm just making that could possibly be a point. There's so many things up to circumstance and metaphorical interpretations, but what's your point? I'm really curious now.
Well, the point is, in 2nd Isaiah, that's chapter 40 to 55, the servant is listed as the nation of Israel, and the main theme of the whole section of text is that God is redeeming his servant from captivity in Babylon. That's the whole theme, right? So that's why the prophecy starts in 52, and you guys can see it, I believe. Let me put it on the screen real quick. It says, "Break forth, shout together for joy, you ruins of Jerusalem, for the Lord has comforted his people. He has redeemed Jerusalem. The Lord has bared his holy arm before the eyes of all the nations, and the ends of the earth shall see the salvation of our God." Now, we know what that means because the book of 2nd Isaiah tells us that the Lord has bared his holy arm on like 10 different occasions. And it's referring to redeeming them from captivity. That's why he says he has redeemed Jerusalem. Are we together so far?
King of Kings, Lord. Revelation 19.
Oh, we're not talking about Revelation. Is that what we're talking about?
King of Kings.
King of Kings.
So far in chapter 52, God is preparing them to exit the captivity, which is why the next verse says, depart, depart to go out from there, touch no unclean thing. Go out from the midst of it and purify yourselves, you who carry the vessels of the Lord. For you shall not go out in haste, and you shall not go out in flight, for the Lord your God will go before you, and the God of Israel will be your rear guard. So he's preparing them to leave captivity now, just like they left captivity in Egypt, except for this time they don't have to go out in a hurry. Then it says,
Right, they're not.
Right, yeah. So he says, see, my servant shall prosper. He shall be exalted and lifted up, and shall be very high. Just as there were many who were astonished at him, so marred was his appearance beyond human semblance, and his form beyond that of mortals. So he shall startle many nations, and kings shall shut their mouths because of him. For that which had not been told to them, they shall see. That which they had not heard, they will contemplate. And this is exactly what the rest of Isaiah says is going to happen when God redeems his people from captivity. It says the other nations will see your vindication, and they'll run to you. In fact, it says the kings of the other nations will bring you their gold. They'll bring you their silver and gold.
Okay, I'm sorry. I made a point and you never really got back.
Sorry, maybe I missed it.
I was talking about, I have this paper here of all the prophecies that were thousands before Jesus were born that did become fulfilled, and they were
right. We're talking about Isaiah 53, right?
Yeah. Still,
Sorry, I'm just laying the groundwork to demonstrate that Isaiah 53 is not actually about the Messiah; it's about the nation of Israel. Right.
Okay. But why? When was the nation of Israel silent for accusers, or are you just completely saying that it never happened? And you're trying to point out, because I mean, they were wounded and bruised. So not the entirety of the nation of Israel. Those who was occupied, and verify whether being certain person or certain Israelites were one of their occupants of Rome. But based off of Isaiah 53, silent before accusers.
I think you're trying to skip over the context. The context is how you know who he's talking about here, right? So he tells you, we already read it. The goal here is for them to leave Babylon. That's what this prophecy is about. And he tells you who the servant is. The servant is being redeemed from captivity. And then it says, the very last thing says, for that which had not been told to them, they shall see. That which they had not heard, they shall contemplate. Well, the very next line is a personification of those nations contemplating what just happened. Who has believed what we have heard, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? Well, elsewhere, God tells you the arm of the Lord is being revealed to these nations who held Israel captive. So this is now a personification of the nations speaking. When they see the thing happen, when the prophecy comes true, this is what they're going to say. And it says, he grew up before him like a young plant, like a root out of dry ground. Well, this is exactly what Isaiah says about the nation of Israel. If you go to Isaiah, is it chapter 60? Let me double check real quick.
In here.
Isaiah 60:21 is what I'm looking for. It says, your people shall all be righteous. They shall possess the land forever. They are the shoot that I planted, the work of my hands. So the root out of dry ground appears, by all accounts, in the book of Isaiah to be the nation of Israel, not to be a Messiah. Right? So the
okay, but
what's that?
About the Messiah.
Sorry, you're breaking up again.
Subjectiveness. Okay.
Sorry, you broke up for a second. What were you saying?
Pretty obvious that he was referring. I think it's pretty obvious he was referring to the Messiah. It's literally like the silent before accusers and wounded and bruised, beaten and spit upon. That's his 56. It's just all too perfect in what the example of the actual Jesus story is, that it's just somehow just by chance that Isaiah predicted this for all of Israel, and then those exact things happened to the Messiah as they were predicted. That's kind of a far out claim. You don't think so? That he's predicting all of Israel when those exact things happened to Jesus and are documented by Jesus by all the four Gospels?
They didn't happen to Jesus. So this is talking about being in the Babylonian captivity, which Jesus certainly was not in the Babylonian captivity. It says that they're going to be called from the land of the living. This is a very clear reference. We know in Jeremiah what that means. It means to be taken captive. Jeremiah quite literally refers to this. Being cut off from the land of living means they're going into exile. And there's other parts of the prophecy that simply could not fit Jesus. For example, it says in verse 12, "Therefore I will allot him a portion with the great, and he shall divide the spoil with the strong." Well, this matches what Isaiah says about Israel. It doesn't match anything with Jesus. Jesus never divided the war spoil with the strong.
I'm sorry. We're still on Isaiah 53.
Well, yeah, Isaiah 53:12. So what you're saying is that because there are some things here that line up with Jesus, that we should ignore the context of all of Isaiah. We should throw all of Isaiah out and only read this one chapter. But I disagree with that. I don't think that's an appropriate way of reading it.
Okay, well, I mean, it's just so perfect, though. It's like you're sometimes chance that Isaiah predicted exactly what happened.
You're breaking up really bad again. We can't hear you right now.
Correct.
We can't hear anything you're saying.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you right now.
Okay, so sorry, I'm trying to make the point that you do believe Jesus existed on this earth. He is a historical figure, and his existence, right? Though you don't believe he's the Messiah.
No, because he didn't fulfill any prophecies.
But you believe.
We're losing you again. We can't hear you.
Hello?
We're having trouble hearing you right now. We can't hear anything you're saying, my friend.
Can you hear me?
Not so much.
Alright, I'm just gonna get back in.
No, you're breaking up really bad. Now we can't hear you at all. All right. Listen, Ann, I don't think your connection's strong enough to stay up, but thanks for coming in. Get when you get to a better reception area, let us know. Come on back. I'll bring you right back to the front of the line, okay? We have Ann coming back. I wanted to get to Ann before it got time to go to bed, because Ann's been waiting very patiently for that last conversation to get through. Welcome back, Ann.
Welcome back, Ann. Oh, Grandma, you're still on the frame. Do you want to be in the frame? Hello?
Yeah, welcome back.
Hi, sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Thanks for being patient.
Yeah, no, it's just I have this whole list of all the prophecies, and I'm just I want to see if you can disclaim all of them, because a lot of them are from Psalms, and you didn't want to do the Psalms one, but there's also Isaac, Ezekiel, Daniel, even some Genesis and stuff. But one I thought that was kind of cool was the Zechariah 11:12 through 13
about being scattered.
I have here I actually have it pulled up right here. I got a Bible. I can read it out loud. It's sorry, let me find it real quick.
Oh, about the 30 pieces of silver?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Have you read Zechariah chapter 11?
Oh, I read it when I was waiting a little bit because I wanted to talk to you about it.
Great.
It's this, and it. Should I read it or sorry?
Go for it. Yeah.
And it was broken in the day, and so the poor. I am not on the right chapter. Sorry. Mm-hmm. 1 second. Zechariah 11:12 through 13. Mm-hmm. And I said unto them, If you think good, give me my price, and if not, forbear. So they weighed for my price 30 pieces of silver. And the Lord said unto me, cast it into the potter, a godly price that was prized of them. And I took the 30 pieces of silver and cast them to the potter in the house of the Lord. And then I also have it written down that Matthew 26 through 14 through 15 says that the exact same thing happened. That Judas, they're referring to when Judas betrayed Jesus, I believe, took the pieces of silver and
That's right.
yeah.
Yeah. So we've got two problems with this particular prophecy is that it's not actually about the Messiah or anybody related to the Messiah. This is about God giving judgment on the wicked shepherds of Israel. So if you go to Zechariah chapter 8 through 12, we find a repeating theme of the leaders of Israel being bad shepherds. And there's a couple prophecies related to shepherds. And this is one of those prophecies. It's a performative prophecy. I'm going to put it on the screen so everyone can see it. And I think you might be able to see my browser already. In verse 4,
Yes,
it
I can
says,
see.
Yeah. Verse 4, it says, thus saith the Lord my God, be a shepherd of the flock doomed to slaughter. So this is a command given to the prophet himself, to Zechariah. It says, those who buy them kill them and go unpunished. And those who sell them say, blessed be the Lord, for I have become rich. And their own shepherds have no pity on them. So now he's saying, listen, even Israel's own shepherds are not good. They don't have any pity on the people of Israel that are being taken advantage of. It says, for I will no longer have pity on the inhabitants of the earth, says the Lord. I will cause them, every one, to fall each by the hand of a neighbor, and each into the hand of a king, and they shall devastate the earth, and I will deliver no one from their hand. So on behalf of the sheep merchants, I became a shepherd. So now this is the prophet saying. The prophet is saying, I have become a shepherd now in this prophecy. I've become a shepherd of the flock doomed to slaughter. I took two staffs, one of them named Favor and the other named Unity, and I tended the sheep. In 1 month I disposed of the 3 shepherds, for I had become impatient with them, and they also detested me. So I said, I will not be your shepherd. What is to die, let it die. What is to be destroyed, let it be destroyed. Let those that are left devour the flesh of another. I took my staff Favor and broke it, annulling the covenant that I made with all the peoples. So it was annulled on that day, and the sheep merchants who were watching me knew that it was the word of the Lord. Then I said to them, if it seems right to you, give me my wages, but if not, keep them. So the shepherd here is actually Zechariah. And Zechariah is doing a performance where he is temporarily a shepherd over the people of Israel. And he actually quits. Like halfway through it, he's like, no, I ain't doing this. So he quits and he says, but listen, if you give me my wages, if it seems right to you, you can give me my wages. But he doesn't take the wages. He throws them back because he didn't actually earn the wages. So this isn't like a prophecy about anyone betraying a Messiah. This is a performance by the prophet himself, giving judgment on the people of Israel.
Ask him why he thinks like that.
Well, my grandma wants to know why you think like that, because it just seems so particular that the 30 pieces of silver would be noted and then given to the potter, which is exactly what happened with what Jesus. It's just so so accurate, seemingly.
The other references to 30.
Well, it doesn't say anything about a potter here. In verse 13, it says, I took the 30 shekels of silver and I threw them into the treasury.
No, it said, verse 13, and I took the 30 pieces of silver and cast them to the potter in the house of the Lord. I'm reading out of the
King James.
The King James version. If you go look at that, it says the exact words. I cast them to the potter in the house of the Lord. Different versions use different words, but I'm not lying about that. Those are the exact words.
Sure, I believe the King James says that. I'm reading the NRSV, which is a really good translation, and it doesn't say potter. And I would be curious why there were potters in the house of the Lord.
I'm not sure. Well, it's just so like
they threw.
It's just so perfect. Like if you think about it, exactly what happens. It's quoted like thousands or 500 years apart. This one happened in 550 BC, and then Matthew said it in it doesn't tell me when Matthew said it. I don't know, to like 78 AD probably. Mm-hmm. And it's just so perfect, and I just don't understand how you could try to say that it wasn't that. It just feels like it is.
See, because you have to pay attention to the actual context of the prophecy. Nowhere in the prophecy does it ever mention a Messiah or anyone betraying a Messiah, does it?
No, not really. It's just the exact number of coins, the exact place that the coins ended up. It just seems like, like I know, yeah, I just don't understand how it
So
can't be seen that way.
in the passage, it's referring to a shepherd that casts off his wages. So was Judas ever a shepherd?
This was a bookkeeper.
Right. Yeah, he was the treasurer. Right. So this is about an actual shepherd ruling over the people of Israel, or at least governing over the people of Israel. It has nothing to do with anyone betraying a Messiah.
I mean, wasn't Jesus often compared as the shepherd of his people?
Yes.
It kind of just seems like it's all connected. The good shepherd, like my grandma said.
He refers to himself as I am the good shepherd.
He refers to himself even as I am the good shepherd.
Yes, but did Jesus throw the money into the treasury, or did Judas?
I don't think either of them did that. I think it was Judas threw it onto the temple floor, and then they took the money and what did they do with it? Buy a potter's field?
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is a contradiction in the New Testament that we don't need to cover right now. But the fact of the matter is, what we don't have is an image of a Messiah being betrayed by somebody. We've got a shepherd who quits his duty because he's upset with the flock that he has to watch over. And he does it again, actually. There's another performance in the same chapter, starting in verse 15. It says, "Then the Lord said to me, take once more the implements of a worthless shepherd, for I am now raising up in the land a shepherd who does not care for the perishing, or seek the wandering, or heal the maimed, nor nourish the healthy." So the judgment of this chapter is on the nation of Israel and for the wicked leaders. There's nothing in here about a Messiah.
I don't know. It's I'm reading out of the King James version while you're reading out of this different version. It just I'm just like transfixed at how different the wording is. Like and it just leads me to think about all the misinterpretations that could be happening between the two of us, just simply based on the wording and then the lack of the language. Because I'm sure our versions are even so far off of how it was originally read. And so I'm just like not even wondering if it's even fair to make the argument that this was impossible to be inaccurate based on simply just wordings, or a lack of, it was specifically mentioning the Messiah based on like just misinterpretations.
Can we ask him his goal? What is his?
My grandma also wants to know what your goal is.
What, are you not a Christian, or what?
I think he's an atheist.
You're an atheist?
I was an atheist. I am an atheist. I was a Christian for 20 years, and I've got a degree from Bible college and seminary. So I'm pretty familiar with the Bible and the original languages. So that's why I'm not a Christian, because it's clear that when we look at these prophecies, they're not actually related to Jesus.
So, but you have a Methodist with this podcast background, United Methodist.
What about it? I'm not Methodist.
I mean, it says that in your information with your podcast, it's mentioning United Methodist.
No,
it was, yeah.
I read it.
Well, maybe it was the Google then. I'm not really.
It said it's related with your podcast.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
I don't have a
podcast.
Well, whatever you call, what do you call what you're doing right now?
Deconstruction Zone.
Yeah, my channel is the Deconstruction Zone. It's possible that somebody else who's a Methodist has a channel that's related somewhat similar, but it's not mine.
What do you call what you're doing right now? It's not a podcast. It's a what?
We just call it like a live stream.
Oh, okay. But what is your goal? What is your point?
My point is to spread truth.
And that will give everybody to become.
I think society is better when they believe things that are true.
Which is that there's no creator?
It doesn't matter what it is. I just think that whatever the truth is, people are better off for knowing it.
And who claims to be the truth? Because isn't that ironic?
Well, the Prophet Muhammad claims to be the last great prophet. Is he true?
He claims to be truth?
He claims to be the last great prophet of God. Is he the last great prophet of God?
Of God?
Yeah.
Well, we're talking the Trinity.
We'll try this again. Muhammad claims to be the last prophet of God. Is he the last prophet of God?
I don't think so. Is he?
Muhammad, I mean, he's got a beginning and an end, you know?
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like, just because someone claims something doesn't mean it's true.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Book of Mormon makes wild claims.
Man,
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, where do you think your destiny is going to be eventually?
I'm going to be worm food. I'm going to be fertilizer.
Oh, you do. You think that you're just created to go back into the earth and be a worm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Respect what I'm saying too, Lily. You don't have to decipher and pick it apart. I mean, really. I mean, you were conceived and born, and you're to enjoy this life. What gives you your right and your wrong?
Oh, easy. I think right and wrong are subjective. I think mankind has kind of developed their sense of right and wrong by watching, observing, and seeing what happens in society when we behave particular ways. But I definitely don't think the Bible can be our source of right and wrong. The Bible says that you can own slaves, says that women don't have rights over their own sexual reproduction. It says that you can stone people. It says that people who never committed crimes can be punished for other people's crimes.
But that's not what Jesus.
Well, the Bible recorded what history was doing at the time. I mean,
No,
that's what
God said you can own slaves. Clearly, He says you can do it. He gives them instructions for doing it.
Well, that's not what Jesus says, though.
Is Jesus God?
Yeah, he claimed to be
Okay.
God.
He
Well,
is.
if Jesus is God, then Jesus said you can own slaves. Leviticus 25:44. As for the male and female slaves who you may have, it is from the nations around you that you may acquire male and female slaves.
That's the Old Testament.
I'm sure it
That's the old-
is. You may also acquire them from among the aliens residing with you and from their families who are with you, who have been born in your land. They may be your property. You may keep them as a possession for your children after you, for them to inherit as property. These you may treat as slaves, but as for your fellow Israelites, no one shall rule over the other with harshness. So you can make slaves.
Well, I don't believe that. Yeah.
I mean, Jesus came to set people free.
Did he set any slaves free?
Possibly, I
Yeah,
don't
I
know.
believe so. We
Sure.
we had.
Where in the Bible can I find Jesus setting slaves free?
He says he wants everybody to be free.
But he didn't free any slaves, did he?
Freed people from their sins. which is
In the
ultimately
regards, well, Martin Luther King. I mean, he was a biblical man, and he was trying to be set free. And
Martin
a
Luther
lot
King
of
got
peop-
nothing to do with Jesus.
I mean, he
I
believed in
think
God.
he renounced some of his claims were because of Jesus,
So,
and he was.
so was Jefferson Davis. Have you ever read Jefferson Davis's speech over the southern states that broke away to maintain slavery?
You're talking about our political people.
No. The president of the Confederacy. Do you know who Jefferson Davis is?
Okay,
yeah,
yeah.
I know that they use the Bible to both decline and to use the agreements to use slavery, but I feel like we're going a little bit off topic right now. I
agree.
kind of want to.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So this paper, it's really cool. My grandma had it. She's pretty smart, but it's broken into these different sections. It's concerning his birth, concerning his ministry, the day Jesus was crucified, and his resurrection and ascension. A lot of them are Psalms, but there's a decent amount of like Isaiah. I wanted to talk specifically about some of the. Sorry.
It's okay. Take your time. Away Zulu. Thank you for the balloons. I appreciate that. Sorry, go ahead.
There enters Jerusalem on a donkey. 550 BC. Zechariah 9:9, and then the ministry of miracles.
Well,
700.
Should we read Zechariah 9 for a second?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So Zechariah 9:9 is part of a larger prophecy, but it says, "Rejoice greatly, O daughter Zion! Shout aloud, O daughter Jerusalem! See, your king comes to you, triumphant and victorious is he, humble and riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey. He will cut off the chariot from Ephraim and the war horse from Jerusalem, and the battle bow will be cut off. And he will command peace to the nations. His dominion will be from sea to sea and from the river to the ends of the earth." So
sorry, before we get into it, your translation said he will have peace to the peace to the who? To the
It says he will command peace to the nations.
Mine says he will command peace to the heathens, and his domain shall be from sea even to sea, and from river even to the ends of the earth.
Right. Well, that's a good point. The Middle English word heathen typically refers to like the non-Jewish people, the nations. So we have a word in Hebrew, the goyim, which just refers to non-Hebrews.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So
Sorry. What?
So yeah, so heathens aren't referring to like non-believers; they're just referring to non-Israelites.
Gentiles,
Yeah.
basically.
Exactly. Yeah. So it says, "Rejoice greatly, O daughter Zion! Shout aloud, O daughter Jerusalem! See, your king comes to you; triumphant and victorious is he, humble and riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey. He will cut off the chariot from Ephraim and the war horse from Jerusalem, and a battle bow shall be cut off." And this is
because it was you were making the point that he never was that like this was basically like proof that he was supposed to be a military conqueror, and then you was basically saying he never did that.
right. Yeah. So according to this text, he's going to be an actual king, and he's going to defeat Israel's enemies.
It's kind of like it's restating, or it's like saying the opposite of what it said before, because the line before says he's going to ride into town on a donkey, and the next one's saying that
Yeah, well, the ancient kings did ride donkeys. So, for example, in the time of Saul, remember what Saul rode? Saul always rode a donkey.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So at the time when this text was written, donkeys were still pretty popular. If you had lots of money, you could get a horse, but it wasn't necessarily that was always going to be the case. But it was the case that riding a donkey was more humble than riding a horse.
Yeah, that's what I inferred, because it seems like on Palm Sunday it's inferred that he rode on like a lowly donkey when he could have had better options. Like that's
sure. Yeah, he could have. Yep, he could have got a horse.
Is your name Danny?
What's that?
Is your name Danny?
No, it's Justin.
Oh, okay.
I
think we researched the wrong thing. Sorry.
Yeah, there must have been something really weird there that I read. But do you know Scott Hahn?
Mm-mm.
I'd like to see you talk with him.
Sure.
I mean, you made a reference that you've went toe to toe with theologians that were Catholics. There's that I would definitely think that you would have to get some debate homework behind to contend with.
I mean, I'll debate anybody. It doesn't matter to me.
No, I'll try to set you up with some of these people,
Mm-hmm.
because I mean, I'd hate for you to live eternally in hell.
Okay.
Well, that kind of brings up a really weird issue, which is, it seems odd to me that God is going to send people to hell for merely believing something or not believing something. Isn't that a weird criteria?
I agree.
Yeah,
it does seem.
Like, if hell was a punishment for bad behavior, then why does it depend on what we believe? Shouldn't it just be dependent on our behavior?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, because then it's also like the relationship with Jesus. It's like people say that I didn't know you,
Mm-hmm.
and what you were saying before to me, how it's like God is the ultimate judge, and people that go to hell will believe that
that God is perfect, and
yeah,
and the Ten Commandments. I mean, that's what they use in the court system. What gave them that basic law?
Well, the Ten Commandments aren't in the court system. The 10th commandment says not to covet your neighbor's slave.
Well, the basic 10 Commandments aren't talking about slaves. Not to covet your neighbor's wife,
Sure, but those are pretty common prescriptions. Like, we find them in the 42 Confessions of Ma'at from Egypt. We find them in the Hammurabi Law Code and the law codes of Eshnunna and Lapitishtar in the Middle Assyrian and the Middle Babylonian law codes. These are pretty common stuff.
The thing is, it's so unique is because it's the 10 Commandments versus like the other laws written by kings cover just so many little things. Like, you can't do this on this certain day, like that. And then the 10 Commandments were like the first moment in history where it was 10 things that you couldn't do, and it was just like it was almost like a unique kind of pretense with that. And it's kind of like the first time they showed up alone. So I feel like some reverence should be appreciated towards them as kind of.
Well, and how many rulers went to their death? That Jesus claimed he died for us, and that's one thing I've heard people say is how.
Simon Bar Kokhba did.
Huh?
Simon Bar Kokhba did.
And who is?
Simon Bar Kokhba was the Jewish Messiah after Jesus that was actually accepted by the Hebrew people. In fact, he was written about by Rabbi Akiva as being the Messiah, and he actually ruled and reigned over Israel for a period of about 3.5 to 4 years. We even have coins with his face and name on them And
Where do you get
what's that?
that knowledge?
Because
Well,
he went to Bible school.
Went to school.
You went to school and you learned in a Christian college, learning to be a theologian.
Yeah, you have to study. You have to study history. You have to study the culture. You have to study the language. Like I took Greek, Hebrew, and then I even took Akkadian. Like I took ancient Babylonian.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Do you speak Hebrew?
No.
I can read Hebrew pretty decently. I can't do modern Hebrew. Modern Hebrew is different than biblical Hebrew. I mean, I probably could. It'd be really slow. I remember like how to read Greek, but I forget a lot of the definitions, so I have to look up a lot of definitions when I read Greek. But I can typically I can pick up my Hebrew Bible behind me and go to a coffee shop and read it without too much trouble.
Mm. How long of a period was it where you?
I'm sorry, we missed your question because you were breaking up on us.
How long period did it take you to realize that you were walking away from Christianity?
Well, I wasn't really walking away from Christianity. Like my brain state of being unconvinced was a slow process. It probably took me about 10 years to get to the point where I just didn't believe in it anymore. And there was a lot of reasons why. I think that one of the first reasons was recognizing some of the contradictions in the text that couldn't be reconciled. So I used to do Christian apologetics when I was younger. In fact, probably when I was about Anne's age, I was doing Christian apologetics the same way I'm doing atheist apologetics now. And I used to go through and I made it my life mission to prove all the contradictions of the Bible wrong. And it turns out there's a bunch of them that you can't prove wrong because they're legitimate contradictions. So then I started studying like the Hebrew manuscripts and trying to figure out why are there contradictions. And it turns out there's even more contradictions in the Hebrew manuscripts than we have in English. And the manuscript evidence for the Bible is pretty poor. It's not good. And we don't even know which manuscripts we should be reading for the Bible. We're kind of guessing at it. And the New Testament makes it even worse because the New Testament constantly is quoting from a Greek text. And our Old Testament is being translated from a Hebrew text, which is why if you take the quotations of the Old Testament that show up in the New Testament and compare them to what's actually in the Old Testament, they typically don't match because the New Testament authors couldn't really read Hebrew. They kept quoting from the Greek text. And the Greek text is a really bad translation of the Hebrew. And they cut out a lot of important stuff. So like 25% of the book of Job is missing from the Greek text. The book of Jeremiah in the Greek Septuagint, there's like a half of chapter 7 is completely gone. And there's about 10 chapters that show up in a completely different place in a completely different order. And it's really bad when you compare the textual witnesses. So that was problematic. But I think the straw that broke the camel's back for me was just really studying the Old Testament in depth and realizing that none of the prophecies about the Messiah ever got fulfilled, and they never will get fulfilled.
What do you think that goes on with this universe and the creator that developed the systems we have, the years, the seasons? What is all this?
Well, I don't think they were created. You know, I think that's just the state of the planetary system that we live in and the universe that we live in.
And the heart works and how your eye works and how your heart beats. And you think all that just came through evolution and sort of made itself, huh?
Sure, yeah, for sure. I think evolution is a pretty good explanation for that, and I think the best evidence that we have for the evolutionary train of man is endogenous retroviruses. So we've got snippets of virus DNA that shows up in our genome. All human beings have them. We share hundreds of them, and as it turns out, a bunch of them we find in the great apes, and this is the wild part. These retroviruses that we share with the great apes, the vast majority of them don't show up anywhere else in the animal kingdom whatsoever. They're nowhere to be found. And the idea that we would share even 2 of them with the apes would be good evidence that we came from a lineage where we had shared DNA, but we actually find hundreds of them that don't show up in the animal kingdom. And so
you study.
What's that?
Sounds like you study a lot.
I do study a lot. My actual formal training was in electrical engineering. I'm an engineer by trade. That's what I do to make money. But
my PhD in that.
Yeah, I mean it's a really good field. It's not as exciting maybe as biology, but it's a really good field. But the fact of the matter is, like, we have explanations for everything that we see around us, and I think the God hypothesis becomes less and less likely because we would then have to explain if God created the world and he fine-tuned everything to be the way that it is. We would have to come up with explanations for why over 100,000 people a year are randomly executed with natural disasters, and then another many thousands are executed, via, being born with bone cancer. Like St. Jude right now is full of children born with leukemia and various types of cancer. This is not something that would be consistent with a God that is all loving.
Sarah, do you hear those noises?
It is.
I-
Another person.
Oh, sorry. If there's, give me a second. There's one more person in the queue behind you guys. Give me 1 second.
Okay.
Okay. I want to talk to you about this one. Openly appears in Jerusalem.
I'll sign up.
All right, we took care of it. We had somebody in the queue, and the problem with the queue on YouTube is that when there's multiple people and they're talking, they can hear each other, and it messes things up. But I dropped them.
I think it's really advantageous that you've come on and you've shared your knowledge and your goals, and that you seem fair enough to hear both sides. And I think you're going to cultivate good stuff to come from your goals, and that you're open. You're probably open to letting somebody convince you, God loves you and cared for you, and that it is. I mean, you're probably open to that if you could go back that way, But maybe. But I appreciate your generosity and the way you handle your live stream and stuff. My granddaughter wants to talk again. She wants me to quit talking.
No, it's fine. No, you're right. If there was solid evidence for God, I would believe, obviously.
Yeah.
And were you going to say something?
Oh, sorry. I hear this person. I don't know. Sorry.
Oh, they came back. Sorry, Noah. Noah. We're on the last guest for tonight. After Anne's done, we're not going to take any more our guests. It's past my bedtime, but they're so delightful to talk to. I kept them on.
Can you see your words?
Sorry, some people are rude to you. I think it's just I think it's not a really good representation of what we're trying to do. It's like God is love.
You're really professional with the public. I think you are.
I appreciate that. I try. It's not, it's not always easy because like I've been live now for 6 hours, and so when you get like a couple hours deep into debate and you've got people that are yelling at you, sometimes you really want to yell and shout back at them.
Well, you just delete them.
Well,
you just tell them,
I don't know. I think I heard some people telling you you're going to hell and stuff like that, and I just believe that's just against the entire.
There's no need for that
because it's like you're still a child of God, even if you.
Yeah, even if you don't want to be.
I mean, that's what we believe.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Anyway.
And when I was a Christian apologist, I never would have talked to somebody like that. My youth pastor growing up told me, you can't carry truth over a broken bridge, and your bridge is your relationship with the people. And so I understood that, like, if you want to convince people of your position, you actually need to treat them appropriately. You can't just treat them like you're a jerk.
Hope that you believe me.
Yeah. That's true. Okay, go. Lily.
Okay, sorry. There's one more. I'm sorry. I'm trying not to keep you too long, but there's one that was concerning his ministry. It was he openly appears to Israel 483 years after the rebuilding of Jerusalem commenced. It's 600 BC, Daniel 9:25, and then it's recent in Luke 19:28 through 40.
Yes. So Daniel 9 is one of my favorite books of the Old Testament. So I apologize ahead of time. I don't think you're gonna like what I have to say about it, but everything that I'm going to say is well rooted in history and the academic study of the Bible. And I think Daniel chapter 9 was actually about the Hasmonean or the Maccabean revolt. So there's a couple reasons why I would say that this is not about the Messiah. I think it's a failed prophecy about what's going to happen after the Maccabean revolt. And here's why. I'm going to put it on the screen, although I think you might be able to see it already, but put it on the screen. You go to the very beginning of the prophecy in chapter 9. I'll wait for you to get there.
Yeah, sorry.
She's going there.
I don't know all the books.
How you do?
Well, I used to. Which
Yeah.
one is it again? Daniel?
Daniel.
Can you help me here?
Prophecy of Daniel.
Thank you.
I don't have my glasses on. Let me get my glasses.
Sorry, you can read it. Sorry, I know you're
Yeah.
trying to get away.
Go ahead. Yeah.
No, it's okay. It says, in the first year of Darius, son of Ahasuerus, by birth a Mede, who became king over the realm of the Chaldeans. And I'll stop there for a second. So the setting right now is that it's already after King Cyrus freed everybody in 539, because we're at Darius. This is kind of a bit of a problem, because Darius the Mede isn't a real person that shows up in history. He seems to be confusing a different Darius that does show up later. He's Persian. And this is a good indicator that who's ever writing this isn't actually alive at the time that they're claiming to be alive, because they keep getting details wrong about the 6th century, and they should know the 6th century pretty well. But they get details right about the 2nd century. They get everything right about the 2nd century. So, for example, there's no Darius the Mede. And it also says, and you know this very well in Daniel, that Belshazzar is the son of Nebuchadnezzar. That's not true either. He's the son of Nabonidus. King Nabonidus was 4 kings away from Nebuchadnezzar. There's 3 different kings between Nabonidus and Nebuchadnezzar. And we've got lots of archaeological evidence to demonstrate this. So the starting point is, who's ever writing this, they don't know what's happening at the time of Daniel. They keep getting details wrong. But to the prophecy itself, it says, I, Daniel, perceived in the books of the number of the years that, according to the word of the Lord, to the prophet Jeremiah, must be fulfilled for the devastation of Jerusalem, namely 70 years. And this is another good indicator, because Daniel is now saying, or whoever's writing is now saying, that I'm reading the words of Jeremiah and I'm interpreting what Jeremiah has to say. So the rest of the chapter is about Jeremiah's prophecy. And Jeremiah, as you know, wrote this roughly the same time that they were being taken captive. And he prophesied that they would be captive for 70 years. Remember Jeremiah 25? He said they'd be captive for 70 years and then they'd come back?
Yeah.
Right. So then he says, I turned to the Lord God to seek an answer by prayer and supplication with fasting and sackcloth and ashes. And I prayed to the Lord my God and made confession. So now he's pleading on behalf of his people. And one of the questions that I think we need to ask ourselves is, why is Daniel praying right now? Because what seems to have happened is Jeremiah's prophecy has failed, because Jeremiah's prophecy was that they'd be captive in the land for 70 years, then they would come back and they'd be completely restored back to their former glory. But that didn't happen. So Daniel now is trying to figure out what's happening here. Why didn't we get restored? And then he says, he prays for his people. He intercedes for his people. And he says, all Israel has transgressed your law and turned aside, refusing to obey your voice. So the curse and the oath written in the law of Moses, the servant of God, have been poured out on us because we have sinned against you. So this is the very important part leading up to this. He says that there's another curse in the law of God that's been poured out. Well, we know what this is. This is in Leviticus chapter 26. In Leviticus 26, God foretells that they're going to disobey the covenant, and then God's going to have to punish them. And then he says, if they don't turn from their ways, I will multiply their punishments by 7. So now Daniel is thinking, oh my goodness, we're not going to be in exile. We're not going to be punished for merely 70 years. It's going to be 70 times 7. We're going to be punished for 490 years. So that's kind of the layout of the prophecy so far, is he's realizing that their time of punishment is actually going to be 490 years and not 70 years. Are we tracking so far?
Yeah, I'm here.
Well, sort of. It's right here.
We're doing our best.
Yeah.
Fair enough. So that's why we get to the interesting stuff, like in verse 24. So he says, 70 weeks are decreed for your people and your holy city to finish transgression and to put an end to sin and to atone for iniquity and to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up both vision and prophet, and to anoint a most holy place. Know therefore and understand, from the time that the word went out to restore and to rebuild Jerusalem, until the time of an anointed prince, there shall be 7 weeks, and for 62 weeks it shall be built again with streets and a moat, but in a troubled time. So we can pause there. So he's saying that there is going to be a rebuilding, And after 7 weeks, we're going to have an anointed prince. It's Mashiach Nagid in Hebrew, means an anointed leader of some nature, right?
It says here until Messiah the Prince.
Yes, because you're reading in the King James, and the King James Bible is trying to insert their own theology into the translation. But it doesn't say that in the Hebrew language. It doesn't say the Messiah. It just says Mashiach Nagid, which means a Messiah leader, a anointed leader.
I don't know. Well, what mine says here, is it all right if I read it out loud to you?
Yeah.
So Daniel 9:25, know therefore and understand that from going forth of the commandment to restore and build Jerusalem unto the Messiah, the Prince, shall be 7 weeks, and the 62 weeks, the street shall be built again, and the wall, even in troublous times. And it just seems so, how could you argue that's not the Messiah then when they use the word actually Messiah?
Because he just explained why.
Why? Because he
The language,
the different version.
he said the King James interpreted the Hebrew, or how would you say, Jeff?
Yeah, so the word Messiah in Hebrew is just Mashiach. And when you're talking about the Messiah, it's going to be HaMashiach, which means the Messiah. So you add the HA pattern to the beginning of the word. That's typically how you would say the in Hebrew. But it doesn't actually say that in Hebrew. It just says Mashiach Nagid, which means a ruling anointed person. Now, most people interpret this to be either Joshua the high priest or Zerubbabel. Both of them fit into that category because we know that the leader, like the king or the prince, was anointed, and we know that the priests were anointed, right?
Right, okay.
Okay, so the general consensus among scholarship is that after the first 7-week period is over, they're referring to when Joshua the high priest was anointed a high priest when the temple was dedicated in 516. So they started rebuilding the temple in 520, and they rededicated the temple in 516 BCE. And the first high priest was named Joshua. But it could also, like I said, be referring to Zerubbabel, who was the leader, the governor of sorts of the people that returned from the Babylonian captivity. But it says they're going to rebuild Jerusalem, right? Until the time of an anointed prince, there will be 7 weeks. And then it says, for 62 weeks, it shall be built again with streets and a moat, but in a troubled time. Which we've probably read Nehemiah and Ezra. We're kind of familiar with that whole narrative about how they're trying to rebuild the place, but the natives are giving them trouble. It says, after 62 weeks, an anointed one shall be cut off and shall have nothing. And the troops of the prince who is to come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. Its end shall come with a flood, and to the end there shall be war and desolations decreed. He shall make a strong covenant with many for 1 week, and for half a week he shall make sacrifice and offering cease. And in their place there shall be a desolating sacrilege, until the decreed end is poured out upon the desolator. So this is where it gets really interesting, and this is really part and parcel with what we read in First Maccabees. Have you guys read through the apocryphal books yet?
I have a little bit. The Catholics have those books.
Well, you know, the original King James did too. So I've got actually an 1823 King James on my bookshelf behind me that still has it. Yeah, it's pretty wild. It's old too. I love it, but it's too old to read anymore because the pages are, they're going to fall out of it. But up until the late 1800s, even the King James Bible has had all the apocryphal books in it.
I heard that before.
Yeah. So if you read First Maccabees, it details the story of the Maccabean revolt. And every detail we read here in Daniel chapter 9 shows up in the Maccabean revolt. It even talks about how the second anointed person here, how he gets cut off. That's Onias III. He's the last anointed priest that was elected by the Israelites to be the high priest, and he was cut off by Antiochus Epiphanes IV, and he was replaced with his half-brother Jason. And Jason made a deal with the Greeks that they would no longer offer sacrifices inside of Israel, and they would make swine sacrifices on the temple even. And
wow.
And there was an agreement. So there was an agreement for 3.5 years, approximately 3.5 years, between Jason and Antiochus Epiphanes that they wouldn't offer the traditional Hebrew sacrifices. That's why it says, after 62 weeks, an anointed one will be cut off and shall have nothing. and the troops of the prince who is to come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. And that's actually what happened. That's what Antiochus Epiphanes did. He came in and he took everything out of the temple. He took all the gold, all the incense pans, all the cups and the utensils, and then he offered a pig on the altar of God. Then it says he will make a strong covenant with many for 1 week, and for half of the week he will make the sacrifices and offerings cease. Well, a half a week in Daniel's time period is about 3 to 3.5 years, exactly what Antiochus Epiphanes did. And then it said, in their place will be a desolating sacrilege until the decreed end is poured out upon the desolator, which again is what happened to Antiochus Epiphanes. He put a statue of Zeus inside of the temple. So, and this interpretation might sound new to you, but it's actually not new. For example, if you turn to the writings of Josephus, have you read Josephus?
I have somewhat, yes. A lot of people quote him.
He's good. So I've got a copy of Josephus with me, and Josephus talks about this time period as well. He says, this desolation came to pass according to the prophecy of Daniel, which was given in the 480th year, for he declared that the Macedonians would dissolve that worship for some time, referring to the prophecy of Daniel being fulfilled by Antiochus Epiphanes. So it seems pretty clear that the prophecy was about Antiochus Epiphanes, and it was written in the middle of the Maccabean revolt about Antiochus Epiphanes. And the best evidence for this is the first 3 chapters of Maccabees, and then I would also read the 4th chapter of 2nd Maccabees. And then here's the other thing that I think, right? I don't think that the New Testament authors believed that this was actually about Jesus in the original context. I think they believed, do you know what dual prophecy fulfillment is?
Not really. Never. I don't think so.
I mean, I can guess dual means double prophecy fulfillment.
Double, double.
So
double meaning.
Yes.
Prophecies are,
yes. So a lot of Jewish people were upset that some of the prophecies kind of almost came true, like the parts about them being punished keep coming true, but the parts about them being restored to their former glory didn't come true. And they also believed that sometimes the prophecies of God could repeat themselves. And so they already knew, they believed that this prophecy already came true with Antiochus Epiphanes, but they believed that it could come true a second time. And they believe this about a lot of the prophecies. But I think the smoking gun, that they believed that this was actually a prophecy that was going to happen again, rather than a prophecy that actually terminated in Jesus originally, is that, remember in Mark chapter 13, when he warns his disciples what to do when they see the surrounding armies encircling the city?
Yeah. Well, what do they
Mark,
say?
What is it?
Mark 13.
Yeah, in Mark 13, I'll pull it up real quick.
13.
I believe it's Mark 13.
Mm-hmm.
Let me grab it.
Interesting. He knows all this knowledge and doesn't believe any of it.
Sorry, can you hear that?
Huh?
I think you heard you say that.
Well, that's okay. If you
Oh,
I'm not
okay.
afraid to say it.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it is interesting.
It is kind of.
It's a lot of research to.
It's just I feel like you could argue the opposite so good and like bring people, to Christ.
Right. So there's a really interesting saying that Jesus does in Mark 13. Oh, I thought I had it on the screen. Let me put it back. Oh, sorry. Give me a second. There we go. It's on the screen now. It says, when you see the desolating sacrilege set up where it ought not to be, which is exactly what Daniel said, right?
Okay.
Owe Zulu, thank you again for the train. I appreciate that. He says, when you see the desolating sacrilege set up where it ought not to be, let the reader understand. Then those in Judea must flee to the mountains, which is a kind of, you might not notice that really well. That's not a thing that really stands out. But when you read through the book of Maccabees, when they set up the desolating sacrilege in the temple under Antiochus Epiphanes, Judas Maccabeus issues a command. It says, everyone who is with me was standing up against the Greeks, head to the hills with me, run to the mountains with me, and they hide out in the mountains.
All right, when's this happening?
No, let him keep talking.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is during the Maccabean revolt in the first 3 chapters of First Maccabees, When Antiochus Epiphanes sets up the desolating sacrilege in the temple, Judas Maccabeus revolts eventually. And he says, everyone who's with me and standing up to these Greeks, head to the hills with me. And they go and they hide out in the hills. So Jesus here is actually quoting the tradition that we find in First Maccabees. He's actually quoting from the Apocrypha here, which leads me to believe that Jesus understood Daniel chapter 9 as not originally being about him, but something that's going to happen a second time. Does that make sense? So,
well, the world is what they're saying. Yeah.
Right. Jesus understood, and he wasn't the only one. There was a number of people in his time period that thought that the book of Daniel was going to happen twice, because the promise that, remember in Daniel chapter 9, it says the end would come and there would be an end to sin and there would be an end to all this other stuff. It kind of painted this idea that there would finally, the Israelites would be free to, to worship as they please and so on and so forth. Well, that kind of part didn't happen, right? But so they what they were saying, like, so if you read Sanhedrin in Sanhedrin 97, part A, I believe, there's a number of predictions by even the Jewish rabbis saying, well, Daniel chapter 9 needs to be fulfilled again before the Messiah comes. The temple has to be destroyed a second time. So Jesus and a number of Jewish people in his time period believed that Daniel chapter 9, even though originally was talking about Antiochus, was going to happen again during their time period.
Okay.
So that's what I think is happening with Daniel. I think originally it was about Antiochus, and other people later thought it was going to happen twice. But I don't think it happened twice. I think it happened once, and I don't even think it was prophetic. I think it was written in the middle of the 2nd century during the Maccabean revolt, because the section of text that we're talking about in Daniel is written in Mishnaic Hebrew, which is a specific dialect of biblical Hebrew that didn't originate until after the Maccabean revolt, when they reinstituted the Hasmonean leadership and they reinstituted their native tongue. They had a very specific form of Hebrew referred to as Mishnaic Hebrew. There's a lot of tells that you're dealing with Mishnaic Hebrew. So it seems to me that this was written during the Maccabean revolt and then probably edited and revised a little bit after then. And they believed, like a lot of apocalyptical, prophecies are, they believed that finally their time of trouble would come to an end. You just got to hold out a little bit longer. But these apocalyptical visions, they never come true.
Mm-hmm. Wow, I can't believe how much you know, and you aren't a Christian. I can't believe it. But what Catholic source did you debate with, or you mentioned something like that?
It's a good question. Is it Bishop Greg Nichols? Now I have to remember. So I debated a guy named Bishop Greg, and believe it or not, we didn't disagree as much as you would think. We agreed in a lot. I think if you're coming from a conservative Christian tradition, you might be inclined to believe that the people that are well educated in the Bible would all disagree with me. But my experience with dealing with priests and bishops and other pastors who have formal educations is most of what I'm telling you is typically what they believe, but they really can't tell you that in church. So there's a lot of people, they complain like, Justin, why aren't you debating people that are like scholars? But the reality is most scholars agree with me. That's where I got my opinions from. In fact, most of what I'm saying you can find in this Christian Study Bible,
which is named.
This is the New Oxford Annotated Study Bible, and it's put together by a team of academic biblical scholars. It's not put together by a religious organization.
Really?
And, the viewpoints that are in this Bible are pretty mainstream for biblical academia. And it, like, when you go through seminary, you're typically told quite a few times that, like, hey, the stuff that you're learning in seminary is not really accepted in traditional Christianity.
Mm-hmm. New Oxford, New Study Bible?
It's the New Oxford Annotated Study Bible, and I've got the 3rd edition. The 3rd augmented edition is super cheap now. You can probably get a copy for $10, but it is on the 5th edition now. If you can get a copy of the 5th edition, I think you'll really like it.
So So you think your non-existence after your life is over, huh? That is amazing. That's just hard for me to grapple onto the fact that I'm non-existent. I don't feel non-existent, after my years are over,
Yeah.
I don't think that,
Well, it's not a pleasant thing to believe. Like, I don't want to believe that. I would love to believe that I'm going to live forever somewhere, but I think at the end of the day, like, you're either convinced by something or you're not. Like, I didn't choose to believe this. This is just what I believe.
Who's Justin Wire?
I don't know. I've never heard of him.
Oh, I thought you mentioned him. Okay, Bishop Greg Nichols, is he Catholic?
Bishop, yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Okay, and what area of the states is he in?
Oh, I don't know. We had a lovely discussion for probably dang near an hour. And then he didn't like the way it ended, though. I think he thought that he could do better over private message, so he started messaging me in my inbox, and he left me these really long, lengthy messages. And I told him, I said, "Listen, I appreciate the dialogue, but I don't debate. I don't do DM debates. I don't debate people in my inbox."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's what I'm on the live for. Like, people are watching me live. We can have a debate in real time. I don't have time to do a text debate with everyone that messages me. He didn't like that.
Like inflections and sound, and
you quoted somebody, Justin somebody. Who is that? I mean, you're Justin, right? I
am Justin, yeah.
Yeah, but who you said Justin somebody, and I thought you said him after Bishop Greg. I was trying to.
Somebody said something about a guy named Justin Wire, but I'm not Justin Wire.
Okay. Oh, but I thought you were going to make a reference to something he said or something like that, or I don't know.
No, but there is a famous Justin on the internet, but I can't give you his name because, as it turns out, there's a famous Justin who's a musician who has the exact same name as mine, but I can't give out my last name because people keep sending me death threats.
Oh, I got you. They want to snuff that guy out, huh?
No, they want to snuff him out.
Yeah.
Oh, snuff you. Because of that,
I don't think they want to do that.
Because of that.
Oh, it's
the other guy's delightful. They don't like me.
Oh, is that right?
That's right.
Oh, the way around. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
But if you ever find him, he makes great music.
Okay.
So you're on once a week, or did I get that right, or no?
Yeah, well, I'm usually on 3 nights a week. Usually Wednesday, Friday, and then Sunday night.
Do you ever? What else do you debate? Like, is this like your? Or what else do you talk about?
Well, I debate against the Muslims as well. I debate, as it turns out, flat Earth comes up from time to time.
I debate about that one, but like for the round Earth idea.
Yeah.
So yeah, I debate quite a few things. It's not just the Bible and Christianity, because I think that, and I actually just talked to a Muslim last night, and the conversation ended with me telling him that his religion is the most vile thing ever invented, because it is. Oh. Islam's the worst thing ever invented in the name of religion.
Everybody agrees to
that. Well, not everybody, but a decent.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, I don't think it's the most vile. I kind of think there's probably other vile, more institutions, but like, I mean, human sacrificing and stuff. But I mean, it's up there probably.
Right. It's pretty bad, actually.
Are they human sacrifice?
I mean, no, the Islam is pretty bad. The way that they operate, like they're just like executing apostates over there.
Yeah.
So if I was an ex-Muslim living in one of those countries, they would just murder me.
Yeah.
Well, they're threatening to do that anyways, it seems like, but at least it's I don't know.
A lot of that goes on.
And they're trying to lower the age of marriage in Iraq to age 9 right now.
Oh man, that's insane.
Because guess how old Aisha was when the Prophet Muhammad consummated his marriage with Aisha? She was 9 years old.
What? Wow. I thought she was older than him.
Consummated it. Oh my god.
Did he have his first wife, and wasn't she older than him?
I'm not sure about his first wife, but I know he married Aisha at age 6 and consummated the marriage at age 9.
Easy.
Pretty bad.
We don't believe in that guy, so.
Yeah, for sure.
It's just, I wanted to say maybe one more thing before you go, and it's in Revelations, and I know it wasn't about Revelations. Sure. Okay, it's like one of the very last parts. It's when you're talking about God's basically threatening you if you change the Bible. It's
Revelation. Yeah, go ahead.
For I testify unto every man that heareth the words of the prophecy of this book, if any man shall add unto these things, God shall add unto him the plagues that were all written in this book. And if any man shall take away from the words of this book of the prophecy, God shall take away his part out of the book of life, and out of the holy city, and from the things which are written in this book. He which testifieth these things saith, Surely I come quickly. Amen. Even so come, Lord Jesus. The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ be with you all. Amen. And that's the end. And it's just, it just seems so much to bank on. Like I feel like you're risking eternal damnation on the threat that what if people change these words? Like it's your entire belief system is based off of the Bible, and even God goes into the possibility of someone changing it. And based on all our different versions, and it seems like books were taken out and books were taken in. It even seems likely that some things were changed, and it just seems scary to me that you're willing to risk it all on something that might even be incorrect, but still, like, I mean, partially, I believe in the Bible. Obviously, sure. Just for someone who you don't believe in the Bible, or maybe I'm not really sure, you don't believe in Christ. Right. That's apparent. And so it just seems like you're risking so much. And I know the prophecy was like, well, you might as well believe in God so you don't go to hell. That's not right at all either. But it's just, so much and you're still willing to like risk like hurt. And it's like you're trying to convince other people too, which is like an ultimate
because he
sin.
believes it.
Yeah.
I mean, he believes it or he wouldn't be doing it.
Right.
So like say about that maybe.
Well, yeah, he's doing it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to point well taken, the penalty for not coming to the Father through Jesus is hell. I don't think Revelation 21 has much or 22 has much to do with that. The prophecy of Revelation, or the curse rather, seems to be about the book of Revelation itself. So when John the Revelator wrote Revelation and he issued the warnings and cursings for anyone that would change anything within that scroll, he seems to be referring to the scroll itself. He has no idea that the Bible was even going to be a thing in the future. But that being said, I mean, the Jewish people did, for a long time change the words of the Bible, and we know that they added to it and took it away pretty often. So, for example, like Isaiah is split up into 3 different sections, and it definitely wasn't written all by the same author, because in 2nd Isaiah, chapter 44 to 55, it's very clear. Chapter 40 to 55. It's very clear that the person writing is living 200 years after the original Isaiah. The original Isaiah wrote in the 8th century, during the reign of Uzziah and Ahaz. And who's ever writing 2nd Isaiah is alive while King Cyrus is alive, while King Cyrus is busy conquering the ancient Near East, which places them, 200 years apart. And we also know that 2nd Isaiah and even 3rd Isaiah, which is the last 10 chapters, they circulated in their own different books, like not even part of Isaiah. In the Dead Sea Scrolls and elsewhere, we've got copies of 2nd and 3rd Isaiah that were circulating, completely disconnected from Isaiah, the book that we have it today. It wasn't until later that they were combined into one book. So I think people, the Jewish people over the course of time have been pretty fond of, adding to or taking away various parts of the Bible without a whole lot of worry about how it's going to affect things.
Oh,
it's just I would be worried to bank so much on that. That's right. Yeah.
Well, let me ask you a question. I don't believe this stuff, right? It's not something that I believe in. Like, can I change that? Can I force myself to believe it?
Guess not.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not that like I hate God or like I want to live a sinful life. I just don't believe that it's true. And so it seems weird to me that we have a God that's like all loving, all powerful. He knows exactly what it would take to convince me, yet he hasn't given me anything that would lead me to be convinced. And I've spent my whole life trying to find it.
I don't know. I've struggled with some stuff like that too, because I remember in my old church, I would ask questions at youth group like, "What's the difference between the Old Testament God and the New Testament God?" And I'm sorry, you're not convincing me. I believe in God. Sorry, it's some of the points you make. Yeah, they make sense, and it just kind of seems like the Bible might not be always completely there with it. It's just, right. I mean, Christ, he said, is impactful and helps me with my day-to-day life, and I see no reason to stop believing in him. And
it seems odd that these professional theologians would be warned by their professors to go easy on what they're learning because how critical it could be for their their body of listeners. So why are they in the business in the first place? Is it to be job security, or that seems odd.
Yeah, there's some of that. Also, there's a lot of people in biblical academia who, that even though they don't personally believe it anymore, they do feel like they can use it as a positive vehicle for change. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Like they feel like they can make an impact using it, even if they don't believe it anymore.
Wow.
They want to make the world a better place. Like their heart is in the right place.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like a lot of Christian organizations, it causes a lot of pain, but it seems like right now it's like they're the main source of people can find help there, and people can, receive prayer and comfort and food, and it just seems like they're doing a lot of good, and like to argue against its main theology, it just seems wrong.
Well, the irony of it all is like the Catholics root themselves back to St. Peter, and then when you look at Martin Luther and the break off of Protestantism, how they started, and their reasoning was for what it was, and it's like, how many Protestant churches do we have now?
A lot.
It's like
some can't agree on anything.
Even at the very beginning, like during the Protestant Reformation, like the first people that broke off were the Anabaptists, and it was literally only a matter of like 6 or 7 years before even the Anabaptists had splinters.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we can't agree on anything.
So that
politics,
after 62 years, I'm sort of going back to Catholicism roots because I saw so much hypocrisy as a teenager, and I just drove away from that reality one day, and then, but Shakespeare was a Catholic, Michelangelo was a Catholic. Hello.
I don't know. I've been to a lot of churches in my life. Like, just yesterday we went to a Protestant a Christmas Eve ceremony, and then this morning we went to Mass, and it's something my grandma and I, we kind of, it's Jesus, like
there's more roots in the Catholic Church. It goes deeper. It goes into the original. It goes to the 12 apostles. It really does. I mean,
no, I hear you. And I love a good Catholic Mass. It's a delightful experience.
Yeah. It's the Old and the New Testament coming together. And what's wrong with eating my body and drinking my blood? I mean, if he can transfigure on a mountain, and if he can raise himself into heaven, and if he can be born of a virgin mother and she still stays virgin, and Holy Spirit conceived him.
Well, those are some of the things that I don't believe are true. You see what I'm saying? Like, I could see why you would have that opinion, but I just don't believe it's true.
Yeah.
It's like you grew up in the church, right? And you never saw like someone's lives change because of like how God affected them, and they become a better person. They lose addiction. They get healed. They families get like brought together. Because I've seen that growing up. I've seen that in all the churches I've gone to.
Certainly, I have. I've also seen it to people in other religions as well. I've worked with people that were Hindu and Muslim, and I had a friend in seminary that converted from Christianity into Islam. And for him, he couldn't get over his alcoholism, but he found that converting to Islam helped him to defeat his alcoholism. So, like, what's that?
Oh, that's interesting. Do you have any friends that stayed in the clergy that went on that you're still friends with?
Oh yeah, a bunch.
That must be interesting for the two of you. I mean, for you guys, you know what I mean?
Do they still like you, or?
Of course.
We're great friends, of course. Yeah. In fact, the one thing that's happened a lot after, because I've been online doing this for like a year and a half now, and a lot of the people that I knew previously that were in Bible college and seminary have contacted me and said, "Yeah, I haven't believed in a long time."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In fact, when I was in Bible college, we had a protocol for people who were in the process of deconstructing and dropping out of Bible college because they couldn't believe what they were learning.
Uh-huh. Wow.
Pretty common.
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, I don't know. You take a society without a belief system, I don't know what kind of structure you're going to get,
Sure. I hear you.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, guys, I had a delightful time conversing with you, but I've got to be up in a couple hours for work.
Virginia's
and
time.
What was going on about the DNA something? I was like trying to listen, but then I was like, I was just like,
Oh yeah, that's a wild conversation. So there's a classification of people who they think that they're Israelite for the sole reason that they are black. And then they go to the Bible and they look for anything they can find in the Bible that would lead credence to the fact that being black makes you a Hebrew. The movement is called Black Hebrew Israelite. It's getting more and more popular. I think it originated in the northeast of USA originally, but
Actually, Oklahoma.
Was it Oklahoma, Bert?
I wrote my rabbinic thesis on it, actually.
Oh, you did? Oh, sorry. There's another person in the chat that you guys can't hear. I apologize. But my friend Bert, who is a Jewish rabbi, is up here. And he's saying that it originated in Oklahoma.
Uh-huh. Wow.
But yeah. Listen, I'd love for you guys to come on back and have more conversations with me.
No,
I think we
will,
will,
and I'm
yeah.
going to try to get some good theologian Catholics to get a hold of you.
I
I'd
don't know,
love
my
to have it.
First is like, I was really shocked that she had this entire page. It's like literally every single prophecy that came true, and I was just like, this is so perfect
Well, I came
for
out-
exactly what you were talking.
I came out of, Chuck Smith Calvary Chapel. I did that for years and years and years. But yeah. You probably know that, but
My my first live stream ever, I didn't know what I was going to do as my live stream. And so I went through the list of 351 prophecies of Jesus, and I debunked them until I ran out of time. I think I got through like 150 of them.
Oh,
wow.
But I don't do that topic as much anymore. I think I beat that horse into the ground like a year ago. So I've been trying to diversify my topics.
Okay.
we're still gonna go to church on New Year's.
Yeah, we're
so
still going to go. But we're going to come back. And
we might go to Spanish
we might-
Mass, actually.
We might bring some more Catholics with us.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Okay.
I love it
Yeah,
for
but-
you.
We like that you have Mass in your Christmas. Merry Christmas is Christmas.
Christ Mass. Yeah.
Christ
I still
Mass.
celebrate Christmas. This is a wonderful holiday.
Yeah.
We do too.
Take care. Nice to get to know you a little bit.
All right. Thanks for coming up. It was great talking to you both.
Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys.
Bye-bye. Cheers.
What a nice man.
Well, they were nice. I feel bad having to do that with them.